Had you seen the Broadway production before?
Yeah, I had.
You had, okay.
No, thought the music was lovely, wasn't, felt it was maybe, could have been a little bit saccharine.
Few performers in the history of stage and screen have possessed the grace, talent, and lasting impression of Dame Julie Andrews. Her career, which has spanned over 7 decades, has led her to become a cultural icon whose influence crosses generations and genres. Her unmistakable voice and screen presence have made her a beloved figure worldwide. The world has followed her rise from her beginnings on the British stage to her legendary performances in Hollywood musicals. But beyond the polished performances lies a story untold. Julie Andrews is not only a star of extraordinary talent, but also a woman who has faced her fair share of quiet struggles. Join us as we explore her journey, uncover more than just a filmography, and discover the hidden truths about her that Hollywood never revealed to us. Julie Andrews has always been the kind of woman who brought to mind elegance, charm, and a voice so pure that it can hush an audience. To the world, she was virtually perfect, the twirling governess who brought joy to the Von Trapps, the mystical nanny who flew in on an umbrella, and eventually the wise queen who assisted a young Mia Thermopolis in becoming royalty. To the audience, her life was, for the most part, a musical fairy tale, but it was anything but. Before the world knew Mary Poppins, before the hills came alive with her voice, Julie Andrews was simply Julia Elizabeth Wells, a kid thrust early into the limelight. So let's take a look at who she originally was and how the pressures of Hollywood shaped her into her current self. The early pressures of expectations and rise to fame. Julia Elizabeth Wells was born on the 1st of October 1935 to Edward Charles Wells and Barbara Ward Morris. Her mom had dreams of becoming a famous pianist, while her father was a teacher who tried his best to provide for the family. Unfortunately, with the start of World War II, their marriage came to an end. After this came the introduction of a stepfather in the person of Ted Andrews, a vaudeville artist from Canada, who Barbara got married to in 1943. For Julie, her entire world flipped over the moment they tied the knot. While entertaining soldiers on their tour of England, Ted and Barbara introduced Julie to the performing arts. The fact that Edward Wells was not her real father was a secret that had been kept from her until she was 14 years old. Although the news was devastating, it had little effect on her relationship with Edward Wells, and they stayed close throughout his life. In fact, her training as a musician is something that could majorly be credited to her stepfather. Her exceptional voice was something he quickly noticed as she spent time with him. He realized that she seemed to possess a vocal range and faultless pitch that was unmatched by most youngsters her age. He thus was very instrumental in her development as a performer as he became her first instructor. Her talent as a musician and performer was something that ran in the family. An aunt named Joan owned a dance studio, while another relative at the time was a performing artist. She grew up in a positive environment that enabled her to explore her talents. At the age of 8, she began her formal training as she enrolled at the voice studio of renowned concert singer Madame Lillian Stiles Allen. Julie, in Madame's opinion, was a once-in-a-lifetime talent who she claimed time and time again was the new Adelina Patti, the finest opera singer of the 19th century. This led her to implement a rigorous training program that revolved around expressiveness and precise word choice. Julie often heard her grandmother say, "The amateur works until he can get it right. The professional works until he cannot go wrong," which motivated her to train relentlessly. Working with the Madame was a rigorous process, and to meet up, Julie went all the way from London while staying in a chilly room whose only source of lighting was a gas lamp. Even with the stress, she cherished every moment of the experience. Her teacher and she would spend the evenings listening to legends of music while sipping ginger beer that they had prepared themselves. During this time, she developed her voice and self-control. She remained with Madame until 1954, when she started working in the United States. When Julie was just 12 years old, she got her big break. She debuted professionally in a musical revue called Starlight Roof at the London Hippodrome on the 22nd of October 1947, where an operatic aria from Mignon, Je suis Titania, was performed by her. Her performance was so thrilling that she got a standing ovation from the audience. This is evidence that from an early age, she was already able to command an audience like an old pro. She gained fame as Britain's youngest prima donna during the course of the show's more than a year on air. She made an appearance at the London Palladium's Royal Command variety show in 1948, where she performed for the royal couple. At 13 years old, she was the youngest solo performer to ever grace the stage at that particular event. In the course of her performance in Starlight Roof, she crossed paths with American comedian Wally Bogg, who was at the time quite famous for live balloon animals. He frequently enlisted the aid of children in his performances. Julie, who was still just a young girl, got up on stage and started singing one evening, and her performance captured the audience even in its spontaneity. At the tender age of 13, she made her formal West End debut in 1948. She then appeared in several musicals and pantomimes, ranging from Aladdin to Humpty Dumpty. Playing Cinderella was a major watershed moment during this time, as it helped demonstrate that she was more than just a vocalist. She also had the acting chops needed for the big screen. She was able to distinguish herself from other young performers by adding humor and warmth to each role she played. At the same time, she was quickly becoming well-known on television and radio. Her appearances in Educating Archie and Up the Pole were staples on BBC television. Through these encounters and roles, she was able to hone her comedic timing. The self-assurance and training she received from performing with seasoned performers at such a young age had become the foundation of her success as an entertainer. The Boyfriend debuted on the 30th of September 1954 at the Royal Theatre, marking her Broadway debut at the tender age of 19. She brought the 1920 French Riviera and the hopes and dreams of a little girl named Polly Brown to life. This was an act that had already seen significant success in London, but she pushed that even higher with her spectacular performance on Broadway. She was irresistible due to her charisma and the ease with which she spoke. Her 1955 Theatre World Award for Outstanding Broadway Debut was proof that critics were paying attention, and they weren't the only ones. Eliza Doolittle is a Cockney flower girl who becomes a refined lady, and the producers of My Fair Lady were also keen on casting her for the role. They required a singer capable of delving into the role's complex emotions and challenging song repertoire. The musical premiered on Broadway on the 15th of March 1956, with Julie in the lead role. As she performed night after night, the crowd witnessed her transformation from clumsy and unruly to elegant and exquisite. Famous songs such as I Could Have Danced All Night and Wouldn't It Be Loverly were an instant hit with many. At the time, it was one of the longest-running musicals on Broadway, having played 2,717 performances. Her first Tony Award nomination was as Best Actress in a Musical. What most people don't realize is that she wasn't originally cast as Eliza. Instead, the part had been first offered to Mary Martin, but she declined. This refusal opened up the window of opportunity she needed, but even with this success, Hollywood had other intentions. Rather than cast her in the film adaptation of My Fair Lady, yet another famous actress was given the role. Julie had already demonstrated her ability to sing the songs perfectly, so of course, there were some voices of discontent raised. Many thought she would have been a better fit for the part, but luckily, she went on to much greater things. Camelot, a musical about the legendary realm of King Arthur, premiered on the 3rd of December 1960, was a bigger stage to shine as she played the role of Queen Guinevere. In the role of Arthur, she was joined by Richard Burton, while Robert Goulet played Lancelot, as drama, romance, and tragic endings symbolized the core themes of the play. Julie elevated her character from that of a love interest to something more graceful and deeper. Her performance in the musical brought her yet another Tony nomination. John F. Kennedy's presidency happened to have tragic relations with Camelot during this time. Following his murder in 1963, Jacqueline Kennedy drew parallels between her husband's leadership and the legendary One Brief Shining Moment of Camelot in King Arthur's kingdom. After leaving a strong impression on Broadway, it was time for her to branch out, and Hollywood had come knocking at the time. The live CBS broadcast of Cinderella by Rodgers and Hammerstein took place on the 31st of March 1957, and she was the featured actress. It was composed with television in mind and not necessarily as a revival of the earlier musical. It was an astounding success, as more than 100 million people tuned in to watch. She was nominated for Best Single Performance by an actress at the Primetime Emmys. By 1964, her movie stardom had fully blossomed. Coincidentally, around this time, Walt Disney had been seeking out the ideal actress to portray Mary Poppins. He was looking for someone who could sing beautifully, had charisma, and a dash of naughtiness. The industry was abuzz with her performances in the likes of Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious and A Spoonful of Sugar. She took home the trophy for Best Actress at the 1964 Academy Awards. Not only did she emerge victorious, but she also defeated the choice of Audrey Hepburn for the portrayal in My Fair Lady. This was a full-circle moment for her in her career. Hollywood was proven to have clearly misjudged her, and the naysayers were silent. Her subsequent features received even more critical acclaim. The Sound of Music debuted on the 2nd of March, 1965, and grossed $286 million globally, making it one of the highest-grossing pictures of all time. She portrayed the role of Maria von Trapp, a former nun who becomes a governess and uses music to improve the life of an Austrian family. Julie brought the character of Maria to life in the film, which was based on a true story, by making her warm, resilient, and joyful. Filming the opening scene, in which she twirls on a mountaintop, was a monumental challenge despite its breathtaking visuals. The photo was taken from a helicopter, and the wind from the blades of the aircraft kept bringing her tumbling to the floor. She made a joke later on about how she was stomped on after each take. She became one of Hollywood's most marketable stars after the picture won 5 Oscars, including Best Picture. However, there was a hurdle to success. Many were concerned that she was becoming trapped in a typecasting trap after playing 2 adored nanny roles consecutively. Clearly, she needed to prove that she was capable of more. She starred with James Garner in the Americanization of Emily later that year, 1964, in a character that was very different from her previous work. The film's scathing and occasionally sinister depiction of war and patriotism befits its World War II setting. She played the role of a widow from Britain named Emily Barham, who falls for a naval officer from the United States. With this major dramatic role, she was able to demonstrate that she could perform in genres other than musicals. This was followed by Alfred Hitchcock's Cold War thriller, Torn Curtain. The movie, which featured Paul Newman and her, was released on the 14th of July, 1966. If Universal Pictures wanted to guarantee success at the box office, they had to cast 2 big actors, but Alfred wasn't happy with the results. He supposedly thought the 2 actors were too stiff for the realistic spy thriller he was going for, and despite its negative reviews, it was a financial success, earning $13 million worldwide on a budget of $3 million. Later that year, she hooped on Hawaii, an epic historical drama adapted from the novel by James Michener. It was released on the 10th of October 1966 with the highest budget of any film at the time. Its staggering $15 million investment was unlike any other seen in the industry at the time, and it was a success. In its home country, it made $34.5 million, making it the highest-grossing film of the year. Julie portrayed Jerusha Bromley Hale, a 19th-century Hawaiian woman who accompanies her husband on his missionary journey. The crew had to deal with tidal wave warnings and heavy rains, which caused several delays throughout filming. The picture was nominated for 7 Oscars despite all the obstacles. Jocelyn Lagarde's unexpected breakout role as a Hawaiian queen was one of the most surprising outcomes of Hawaii. Despite her lack of acting experience, she was bestowed a Golden Globe for her performance. While circumstances drew attention to Jocelyn, an obvious trend was starting to form, one that would have her proving her relevance and skills to Hollywood one too many times. After having the spotlight mostly taken from her in the last, her role as Mary Poppins in 1964 once again reminded Hollywood of her talent and skill. The following year would see her taking up an iconic role in The Sound of Music that cemented her place in film history. However, a shift occurred in the late 1960s that threatened to almost cut short her career. The first of the disasters was in 1968 when she starred in Star. The film was a lavish biography centered around the life of the legendary theater actress Gertrude Lawrence. At the helm was the experienced director of The Sound of Music, Robert Wise, with a $14 million budget to produce a masterpiece. The problem, though, was that viewers felt that Julie's performance lacked authenticity and was too fake. Unlike her previously realistic renditions, it was so bad that even Variety slammed it, calling it overdone, which is a harsh critique for someone whose effortless charisma is well known. Among Hollywood's most costly flops, the picture was a complete and utter bust. The second disaster came in 1970, when her husband Blake Edwards directed Darling Lily. Issues occurred when the expected budget increased to $25 million as a result of reshoots. Due to this series of failures, she sought a new identity, and her next one shocked everyone. Previously regarded as a pure icon, her debut on screen swearing and strip-teasing shocked viewers, fans, and critics alike. Unfortunately, the movie bombed, and it was evident that she was no longer the top musical star in Hollywood when audiences failed to relate to it. Oddly enough, she managed to secure Golden Globe nominations for both of these films despite their failures. Even while she maintained her respect, the fact remained that Hollywood had moved on and that she needed to adjust her game if she wanted to be relevant. Then television became her focus. The Julie Andrews Hour, a variety show she started in 1972, allowed her to show off her talents outside of musicals. ABC was so confident in her that they granted her an unusually long contract of 5 years. Was this finally going to be the point where she turned everything around completely since she'd been given such show ratings trust? Well, not exactly. When the show premiered, it included comedy, special guests, and musical numbers from her film and Broadway careers. The reviewers were raving about it, praising her charisma, voice, and versatility. However, a different story emerged from the ratings. On Wednesday nights, the show competed with other popular programs and failed to attract a large enough viewership. The show was canceled prematurely by ABC in April 1973 after only 1 season and 24 episodes. Only 30 days later, the Julie Andrews Hour swept the Emmys, taking home 7 statuettes, including Outstanding Variety Musical Series. This was an unexpected twist, but regardless, it appeared a bit too late. Still, ABC tried to make amends between 1973 and 1975, and they provided her with 5 variety programs to compensate for the cancellation. It was some solace, but it was obvious that television wasn't her calling, and she once again needed a fresh start, so she took an unexpected turn. Something out of the ordinary had happened to the most adored nanny and governess in the world. Nightclubs became her go-tos. Jazz singers and edgy comedians were the nightlife's renowned, not ex-Disney stars. That, however, was her driving motivation, as she had to shed her previous self-presentation. In these performances, she showed a new side of herself. She sang jazz standards, made jokes about Hollywood, and even poked fun at her own past roles. Audiences regarded her as more than just a musical theater star. It was something more. She was funny, smart, and adaptable, and critics praised her for her ability to switch between Broadway ballads and jazz arrangements. She was able to restart her career with nightclub performances. Then, she returned to the top of the box office after an absence of over 10 years. She was one of the leads in Blake Edwards' 1979 romantic comedy, 10, which also featured Bo Derek and Dudley Moore. With nearly $74 million at the box office, the movie was a huge success, and it was a perfect fit for her. 2 more daring features followed. One, a satire of Hollywood called S.O.B., was released in 1981. Julie surprised everyone in one moment by appearing topless, which was very unexpected. It was a bold move where she was demonstrating that she wasn't afraid to break out of her shell. The next one was a role that reshaped her career in the 1982 movie Victor or Victoria. Victoria Grant, portrayed by her, is a struggling singer who performs in Parisian nightclubs as Count Victor Grzinski, an impersonator of a male. With this revolutionary role, Hollywood dared to explore gender identity and sexuality in ways that were previously unheard of. Audiences who had known her as Maria von Trapp now saw her playing a complex, daring role. The movie was both a critical and economic success, making $28 million in the United States. In addition to her Best Actress Oscar nomination, she took home the Golden Globe for her work in a comedy or musical. The film itself got 7 Oscar nominations. It was a turning point for her, who was no longer portrayed as the innocent singing governess. She was versatile and could play roles that were both daring and unexpected. Between navigating the many ups and downs of stardom and reclaiming her relevance came love's own struggles, one that she somehow balanced with her already strenuous career, love and challenges. Julie Andrews' dazzling career was not only filled with unforgettable roles and timeless performances, but also actively shaped by her love life. She met her first husband, Tony Walton, long before fame arrived. He was a gifted costume and set designer who had been in love with her since he first saw her perform at the age of 11. Years later, romance blossomed between them, and in 1959, they got married. He would go on to design costumes for one of her most iconic films, Mary Poppins, in 1964, which was a blend of their worlds. In 1962, they welcomed their daughter, Emma Walton Hamilton, and their home was blessed with a new life. Unfortunately, as her career soared, whether on Broadway or the sets of Hollywood, it took a heavy toll on her personal life. The demands of fame and constant work caused a strain on their marriage. This led to the couple divorcing in 1967, leaving her emotionally devastated. The breakup led her to seek therapy, a decision that would help her confront the emotional weight of her life. Director Mike Nichols encouraged her to pursue professional help, and she took his advice. Therapy allowed her to sift through what she later called the clutter and garbage in her mind. It became a healing process, giving her insight and renewed strength. Later in life, she would speak openly about her experience, even advocating for mental health awareness. In a twist of fate that could only happen in Hollywood, she met her second husband, director Blake Edwards, outside a therapist's office. Despite a 13-year age difference, the two clicked immediately over shared experiences of heartache and recovery. Their relationship deepened over time, and they married in 1969. Together, they built a life full of warmth and mutual support. She became stepmother to his children and later adopted 2 Vietnamese girls, Amy and Joanna, with Blake. They collaborated on 7 films, including the acclaimed Victor or Victoria and the satirical S.O.B., but not all of their projects were successful at the box office. Darling Lily, in 1970, struggled at the box office. She often credited his dry humor with keeping her grounded. Their marriage lasted 41 years, until his passing in 2010, and she would continue to describe their life together as a great and enduring love story. While he was alive, though, she embraced new challenges in the 1980s. In the 1986 movie, she played a singer grappling with a potential cancer diagnosis. It was a role that mirrored her own fears, as doctors had discovered a lesion on her throat. Around the same time, that same year, she portrayed a world-famous violinist coping with multiple sclerosis in Duet for One. Both of these were raw and heartfelt performances that earned her Golden Globe nominations and further proved her dramatic prowess beyond her musical roots. By the 1990s, she ventured into television with mixed success. In the 1992 sitcom Julie, she played a TV host who moves to a small town with her veterinarian husband. It was directed by Blake, and sadly, the show failed to find an audience, which led to it being canceled after 7 episodes. Still, her versatility kept her in the spotlight as she starred in the 1987 TV special, The Sound of Christmas, which received 5 Emmy nominations. She would later reunite with Carol Burnett in 1989's Julie and Carol Together Again. In 1990, she thrilled audiences with her concert special, Julie Andrews in Concert. After nearly 3 decades away, she returned to Broadway in 1993 with Putting It Together, a Stephen Sondheim musical revue exploring love and regret. Though it had a short run, the comeback was significant. In 1995, she reprised her role from Victor or Victoria in a Broadway musical adaptation that ran for over 700 performances. She earned a Tony nomination, but is known to have famously declined it, stating she couldn't accept an award while the rest of the cast was overlooked. In 2001, she made a triumphant return to Disney with The Princess Diaries. She was cast as the regal Queen Clarice Rinaldi. She played grandmother to Anne Hathaway's clumsy teen princess. Director Gary Marshall chose her without an audition, knowing she was perfect for the role. The film was a worldwide hit, grossing $165 million and marking a full-circle moment following her Oscar-winning Mary Poppins. Her warmth, elegance, and quiet humor made Queen Clarice one of her most beloved later roles. Despite undergoing surgery in 1997 that left her unable to sing, she had a rare opportunity to perform a song in The Princess Diaries' 2 royal engagement in 2004. That same year, she lent her voice to Queen Lillian in the animated blockbuster Shrek 2. This was a role she would reprise in Shrek the Third in 2007 and Shrek Forever after 2010, solidifying her appeal with a new generation of fans. She also narrated Enchanted in 2007, a movie that mixed fairy tale tropes with modern New York. Her voice set the tone of enchantment, contributing to the film's $350 million global earnings. In 2010, Tooth Fairy, she portrayed a no-nonsense fairy in a film that brought in $112 million, once again showcasing her comedic timing and appeal. Her directorial skills came to the fore in 2016 when she took charge of a stage revival of My Fair Lady in Sydney to mark the musical's 60th anniversary. Paying homage to the original, she meticulously recreated the iconic sets and costumes. The production received glowing reviews and set box office records. In 2017, she turned her focus to children's education with Julie's Green Room, a Netflix series she co-created and hosted. Designed to teach kids about the performing arts, the show featured celebrity guests like Idina Menzel and Alec Baldwin. It was a family affair, with daughter Emma Walton Hamilton co-producing. The series received 2 Daytime Emmy nominations. The loss of her singing voice remained a defining moment in her life. Initially diagnosed with hoarseness during her Victor or Victoria Broadway run, she underwent surgery in 1997 at Mount Sinai Hospital to remove what some called nodules and others benign polyps. What was intended as a simple procedure left her vocal cords irreparably damaged. Scar tissue prevented them from vibrating correctly, and her crystal-clear soprano was silenced. She later revealed she was not fully informed about the risks, and in 1999 she filed a malpractice lawsuit against the hospital and surgeons. The case was settled confidentially in 2000, but the emotional loss was irreversible. She sought further treatment and surgery with Dr. Stephen Zeitels at Massachusetts General Hospital in hopes of restoring her speaking voice, though her singing voice remained lost. Instead of giving up completely, she changed her strategy and renewed her determination. In 2002, she began supporting scientific efforts to restore vocal cords, funding joint research between MIT and Harvard Medical School. This was despite knowing she probably wouldn't benefit directly. She at least hoped others might be spared the same despair she had gone through. She turned tragedy into purpose and began writing children's books with her daughter Emma, cultivating a new legacy through storytelling. Though her voice had been silenced, her impact continued to grow. She has spoken openly about the emotional toll of losing her ability to sing, calling it a deeply personal tragedy. Yet her influence endures. Whether as Mary Poppins, Maria von Trapp, or Queen Clarice, she left a clear mark across many generations. What do you think of Julie Andrews' story? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. To enjoy more exciting videos, click play on the video on your screen. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you get notified when a new video drops.